Welcome back to this special live edition of Facing South Florida. We're getting ready for Tuesday's primary. Nearly 2 million people have voted so far. That probably puts us on track for a turnout in the low to mid 20s. In Miami-Dade County, more than 132,000 people have either voted early or by mail. Another 96,000 people in Broward have already cast their votes. On Friday, Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib was in Broward campaigning for Senate candidate Angie Nixon.
Nothing is going to stop this movement. No one will silence us. No one will stop us from saying, stop the genocide, stop the warmongering, stop.
We'll talk more about that in a minute. And in the last half hour, we did talk about the governor's race with Sean Frieder, the director of the Public Opinion Research Lab at the University of North Florida. Now we turn our attention to the Senate primary race among Democrats to see who will take on Ashley Moody. Alex Vindman is a retired lieutenant colonel whose testimony led to Donald Trump's first impeachment. He was recruited by Florida party leaders to run and has used his national profile to raise more than $16 million. He is facing off against State Representative Angie Nixon, easily the most progressive member of the Florida legislature, who was arrested after staging a one-woman sit-in in the governor's office and who blasted her colleagues on the floor of the House with a bullhorn to protest congressional redistricting.
So this race is difficult, first of all, to predict at all. I would say, take everything with a large grain of salt in this, because there's very, very little on the ground polling from reputable organizations as to who's going to win between Nixon and Vindman. Even our own lab did not poll on this because we couldn't put together a poll of likely Democratic midterm primary voters. That's a very niche population. So like other firms, we don't have numbers on that. So instead, you're left trying to understand this race based on fundamentals. And so on one hand, you have Vindman. Notable because of his involvement in the first Trump impeachment effort all the way back in 2018, 2019. Angie Nixon, much more notable for local voters and here in Jacksonville, where we're based out of, and Florida generally, as she's been a member of the state Senate for several years. Another huge factor is going to be the role of money. Vindman has a lot more money in his war chest that he's been able to raise and been able to use in the primary. So Vindman definitely has a money advantage there. In terms of party endorsements, Vindman also probably has a significant advantage, at least endorsements coming from national level party figures. Nixon is running much more of a grassroots effort campaign. And this leads really to the big difference between them, which is ideological. We see this a lot in races across the country right now within the Democratic Party. Those on sort of the left flank of the party have been challenging more than they usually do those that kind of are more from the moderate flank of the party.
All right, let's take a closer look at this race now. Joining us once again is Laura Kelly, the chair of the Miami-Dade Democratic Party, and Kevin Cooper, chair of the Miami-Dade Republicans. Thank you both for coming back in. In the last half hour, I asked Kevin if Republicans have a James Fishback problem on their right. So I'm going to start with you and ask you, do Democrats have a Democratic Socialist problem within their ranks?
Not in South Florida. Absolutely not in South Florida. The DSA is not the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is not DSA. And as far as I'm concerned, the only candidate that is running in South Florida that is actually a DSA member is Oliver Larkin, and against Jared Moskowitz. So I don't think it's a problem. I think there are people who want to make it a problem. They want to use that label, the Democratic Socialist label, in order to hurt our candidates. But the truth is the vast majority of our candidates in South Florida are moderates, centrist, center-left candidates. And so, again, DSA, irrelevant.
All right, I'll bring you in. Rashida Tlaib in Broward. Did the Miami-Dade Republicans help sponsor that trip? Because that worked well for you, I would imagine.
Look, there's no difference between a Democrat socialist and a socialist, right? They're socialists. They subscribe to socialist ideology. And here in South Florida, we know that socialism will not work. It hasn't worked overseas. It hasn't worked around the world. It's not going to work here in the United States.
We agree on
reject
that.
it. Well, thank you. I'm happy to hear that. But at the same time, you had someone like Rashida Tlaib, who, beyond being maybe perhaps a member of the DSA, she's a radical. She's a radical. She can set anti-Semitic commentary. And for candidates to be standing next to her with that type of ideology, I mean, she supports Hamas and these other terrorist organizations.
I want to go back to Laura here for a second on this, because I think this is going to be an interesting question as to what sort of vote Angie Nixon gets, what sort of vote does Oliver Larkin get, and I agree with you. I'm leery of whether or not the DSA message is catching on here. But I will say that clearly the DSA movement has tapped into something as it relates to the Democratic Party in terms of feeling as if the party is not doing enough, that the party structure, that the party hierarchy, that the party leadership is not fighting in a way that they can get behind. And so did Democrats basically leave this opening for the Democratic Socialists to come into their party and try to take over?
Well, I think that to some extent, I think that is true in that after 2024, people saw that shift to the right, and they thought that maybe that having a more center moderate approach would be the way to win elections. And so I do think that there is a faction of the party that wants to see us move more left. But at the end of the day, it's for our voters to decide the direction of the Democratic Party, and it's local. I mean, we are not New York. We are not Michigan. We are South Florida. And in South Florida, like I agree with Kevin. I don't think that the DSA has a role here in South Florida. And again, there's less than 200 DSA members in South Florida. For me, as party chair of the Miami-Dade Democratic Party, they're irrelevant to us.
I want to ask about a couple of other races that aren't main races, that aren't the big races. You know, we've got a state house race between Democrat Lucia Baez-Geller and Ashley Litwin-Diego, and the winner will take on Republican State Representative Fabian Basabe in November. Fabian Basabe was found liable in a civil court in Tallahassee for sexually harassing two of his male staffers, including an intern. For battery and for defamation. Will the Republican Party, I'm not sure who's going to win that race between Lucia Baez-Geller and Ashley Litwin-Diego, but does the Republican Party plan on standing behind Fabian Basabe, who now stands judged as having committed sexual harassment?
I'll let Fabian Basabe speak for himself on that issue, but I am happy to talk about the Democrat candidates that are running in that race.
But wait, I'm not going to let you go.
Ashley Diego.
Wait a second. No. Does the Miami-Dade Republican Party plan to continue to support and campaign for and assist Fabian Basabe in the November election?
Like I said, that's Fabian's to discuss that.
No, but you're the head of the party. You make the decision as to where party resources are going. Will party resources be going to help Fabian Basabe?
I will allow him to discuss that on his own. But I am happy to discuss the Democrat primary, and I will talk to you about that, because the Democrat primary, you have a candidate there running who spent a lifetime defending criminals and getting criminals out of jail. For example, a rapist, someone who raped a woman in the back of an Uber, and Ashley Diego was the attorney who got that sentence reversed.
So you find that an attorney representing a client in our criminal justice system is disqualifying?
I'm not saying disqualifying, but I think she should answer for it.
Okay. I'm going to let you weigh in on the Fabian Basabe of it all.
Well, I mean, Fabian Basabe said he would resign if he was found liable. He was found liable. He did not resign. That's it is disgusting, and what he was found liable for was obviously personal. Whereas, I mean, Ashley Litwin-Diego is a criminal defense attorney who defends the Constitution because everybody deserves a fair trial.
I have only a minute, and I want to go to another race that is very much flying under the radar, a judicial race between sitting judge Mavel Ruiz versus Destiny Alvarez. Mavel Ruiz was the judge who heard the case involving Marvin Dunn's trying to block the Miami-Dade College transfer of the Trump Library. She ruled in Dunn's favor that Miami-Dade College needed to take a public vote, that the way they handled it was a violation of the Sunshine Law, and they eventually redid it. The Republicans have now really come out and targeted Mavel Ruiz, but I would ask you, did Mavel Ruiz not open the door to this by doing things that made it appear that she was biased towards Marvin Dunn? In fact, she's been disqualified from hearing any future cases. I guess I'm curious as to your take on it, then I'll come to you. But did Mabel Ruiz bring some of this on herself?
No, I absolutely not. She ruled correctly in that case that there needed to be a public hearing. They held the public hearing. After the public hearing, the case was dismissed. And in terms of Destiny Alvarez, I have to say, when we talk about disqualifying, she's a candidate who has never tried a case in court and wants to be judge, compared to an excellent judge who's on the bench, who's tried over 200 cases.
I want to bring you in on this.
I just want to state, for legal purposes, the party has not endorsed candidates for judge.
Absolutely, no, we have not
prohibited
either.
by statute from doing that. So I just want to mention that
Sure.
this is separate.
But
from
there
our official
seems to
titles.
be a R versus D element to this campaign.
I'm happy to discuss it, right? I think you need judges in court who are going to decide issues on the merits and keep partisan bias out of the courts, and or bias towards anybody out of court. Courts are supposed to be neutral. And in my personal capacity, I think Destiny would do a great job.
All right, we could do the entire hour. You guys are great. I really appreciate it. All right, when we come back, we're going to take a look at District 25 with our journalists. Hopefully, we'll have Liv back too by then.